Okay, I'm going to try to do the share screen again. If we get locked up for some reason, then I figured out another way that we can do it. But I will have to back out one more time and come back in. We can we can actually uh, coordinate our screens, all of our screens, at the same time without sharing them. Okay, first let me just try the regular share screen. Okay, it didn't work. So
I saw your screen.
what did you say?
I saw your screen at least, and you were trying to say launch meeting.
Yeah, I saw your screen too.
Yeah, I saw your screen too.
Okay, well, that's interesting because that's what I was going to suggest we do. Let's try this together. Well, let me do it first, okay? I'm going up to Confer Zoom. I'm going back. You see this?
Well, no, you have to share your screen again because you took us out of share screen. So share your screen again.
Nothing? Okay, it's not working for me. No? No. Okay, well, we need to get this finished with, and then I'll need to contact IT. But I think we are going to be able to go on. Go up to, now you have to be with me on this. We have to be together. Go up to Confer Zoom. Do you have Confer Zoom up there?
Yeah.
Click it. Do you have the setup page?
The part that says join.
I'm looking for you to have the Confer Zoom page, the one that has the menu on the left, and then it has the join and everything. Let's.
Yeah, I see it.
Yes.
Okay. Who's not seeing it? Okay, if you're seeing the Confer Zoom page, so am I. Okay, but come down instead to modules. Find modules, and let's go there. Are we there?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's hard to tell how many people. Here are 3. I don't want to leave people behind. Okay. I'm passing by, and you'll have to scroll along with me. I'm passing by the meet and greet. That's what one of the assignments is for you. Okay. I'm passing by week 1 assignment. The week 1 assignment is the chapter outlines. Okay, so it simply says chapters 1 and 9. That's all you have to worry about. The lecture on the 19th, we did on the 19th. And then we did the lecture on joints on the 19th. I want to go to backwards on the 19th so that we can do all of these bones at once. On 119, bones and structures, skull part 1. Click it, please. And you just see a sort of title page.
Yes.
Okay, so we're actually sharing screens here, but a little bit differently than expected. There's always a way. Okay, I'm coming
You
down.
want, you want
Yes.
one of us to try to share our screens?
Then that would be fine, but I don't have any control. I can't point to things.
I think you can like draw on it.
Yeah.
You have to
Well,
tell us when to scroll.
it doesn't
but-
matter. Yeah, I understand. Well, okay, if you, I'll wait. I'm just going to wait right here. Go ahead and try to share your screen. Who's this?
Amber.
Okay, Nicole.
Mhm.
Okay. Go ahead and give it a try.
Can you see that?
No.
I can see it.
I can see it too.
Okay, you're seeing it. I'm going to turn off my Zoom camera. Okay. Hey, somebody's earning points. Okay.
This happened in my last class last semester.
The instructor had the same problem?
Yeah, so we just did this. And I think if you go to the top, you can press annotate and write on it. It might just be a little laggy.
Okay, I know I'm spinning around here pointer, but you can't see it. I can see your pointer next to lab 115. Okay, I want your pointer down at skull part 1. And
This
click
one?
it on. Yep. Okay, this save the day. Go ahead and scroll down. Now, are you guys seeing faces over on the right-hand side? Are you seeing images of yourself?
Yes.
Why don't you, can you minimize that?
Yeah, we can minimize it.
It's usually right at the top.
Amber, if you scroll to the top on the right-hand side, there are little arrows that point out, and you click on that and it'll make the screen bigger.
Where?
So scroll all the way to the top. So scroll to the top of the specific like power.
Oh, okay.
And then those arrows right there.
Yeah, but it's hidden now. Okay, you got it. Okay, thank you. Okay, let's go down one. Stop right there. Okay. Now, you can follow this in the book, or you can follow in the book later. Okay. I think probably later would be better than right now. Look at the parietal bone at the top left. The parietal bone is called a flat bone. It doesn't look flat. It's curved, but it's still considered flat because it's very thin in comparison to its overall dimensions. We went around the parietal bone the other day and found 4 sutures. Start with the sagittal suture on the top right. Okay. Come down, and it splits into 2 sutures, the lambdoidals. Okay. One shows on the left, the lambdoidal suture. I'm waiting for you, the arrow to. Thank you very much. Okay, now keep going on the lambdoidal suture to behind the ear, right there. Okay, and then up and over is the squamosal suture, which covers the squamosal portion of the temporal bone. Show the temporal bone, please. Okay, the temporal bone is flat in half of its area, and that flat part is the squamous portion. So if you feel your temples at the side, they're quite flat at that point, okay, and thin as well. That's the squamosal portion. Okay. Now drop back down to the bottom, right where you're going, right there, to the mastoid process. That's the structure behind the ear. We all have reasons for wanting to know the names of these because each of them has special functions. The mastoid process attaches to the clavomastoideus muscles, which are on either side of the neck, that turn your head right, left, or downward for that matter. So you want to know the mastoid process. Temporal bone above it, squamous suture above that, parietal bone, there are two of those. At the very base of the skull, the back, down at the bottom, is the external occipital protuberance. Long name for something you probably called a bump when you were a kid. Okay. But you need to find that occipital protuberance on yourself, and the occipital bone is above it and quite large and goes underneath the skull. Okay, now that's not time enough to absorb that. You have to, that's why you have, face-to-face class, you have lab afterwards, you have time afterwards, you'll have time after today if you want to continue to study. Okay, I do have a bone box with me. And the reason I'm not using it right now, well, first off, I can't share the screen, it seems. Yeah, I could, but I'm not using it now because it's so new. It's such a new bone box that the sutures don't show. They're so bright, so light. So a little bit later on, we'll be using actual bones for almost everything. Let's scroll down, please, to the next picture. Okay, it's a little bit small, but you can see the sagittal suture in the middle from the posterior side. Okay. And then come down, it splits into the lambdoidal sutures. The parietal bones are on either side of the sagittal suture. And then the occipital bone below that, and then the occipital protuberance, external occipital protuberance. Okay. Nothing new in this slide compared to the other one, just a different angle. This skull is part of the axial skeleton. The axial skeleton runs straight down the body, bilaterally symmetrical as most of the body is anyway. It includes the skull, it includes the spinal cord, it includes the ribs as well. There are 80 bones in the axial skeleton. There'll be 126 bones in the appendicular skeleton that belongs to the arms and the legs. That 126 is actually an easy 126. Everything completely being symmetrical. The 80 axial bones are a little bit actually harder to learn. I put myself to sleep sometimes. I can't get to sleep all the time. Last night was one of those nights when I was thinking about our class. I was not thinking about this situation. But I often, when I can't go to sleep, I don't count sheep. I count the 80 axial bones. And when you get to about 76, 7, or 8, you can't remember the last one. You just cannot remember. It drives you absolutely crazy. You got to start again. And pretty soon you find that you can't start again. You just fall asleep. So it's a trick you might want to play. Please, let's go down to the next. Okay. Now, let's start with what we know. Find the mastoid process on the left, behind the ear. Okay. Now, below that and in front of it is the styloid process. Styloid means needle-like, quill-like, pen-like. Most of us have styloid processes that are broken. They break quite easily. It doesn't hurt when they break. They're not terribly useful, but we do mention all the markings that we can. So there's the styloid process. It's like a fang. Above these two is the external auditory meatus. The external auditory meatus is the hole for the ear to enter into. Okay. External auditory meatus. It's sometimes called the external acoustic meatus. Both would be correct, but on our exam, which is multiple choice, of course, and machine graded, I will only use terms that you see here. If there are two terms and I might use either of them, I would let you know ahead of time. Let's go underneath the chin and find the hyoid bone. The hyoid bone is the only bone in the body that doesn't have an articulation or joint with any other bone. It just hangs there, suspended by muscle and ligament. The hyoid bone. Very important though in swallowing and in speech. Let's go up to the zygomatic bone, which is commonly called the cheek bone. The cheekbone or zygomatic bone, as I mentioned, occasionally gets doctored. People have their cheek bones implanted. I don't know if you know an old actor named Mickey Rourke. Really a GQ handsome type guy. Ruined his looks by inserting the implants for the zygomatic bone. Now, in front of that, come forward, we're actually in a different bone. The bone we're in is the maxilla. It goes from, go back towards the zygomatic bone to the, there. Okay, now come that back the other way to the teeth. All the way to the teeth. And now right and left. Right, perfect, you got it. It's amazing when you find somebody, when you have and share an instruction with, that they know exactly what you're thinking. You know, it's scary too. Probably scary for the person. Okay. The bone that we just looked at that has that hole in it, the infraorbital foramen, is the maxilla. The infraorbital foramen conducts nerves and blood vessels. You can find yours by putting a finger on both sides, or at least one side, under the eye, towards the nose, and moving it around until it hurts. And when it hurts, you found it. Okay. The infraorbital foramen. Okay, let's go down one. I'm not pretending that you have mastered these just because we go through once. We have to go through more. This information is all on our Canvas page all of the time. All of the lectures are on Canvas. Okay? So we're doing the class both synchronously and asynchronously. For asynchronously, we have all of the material right in front of you. And for synchronously, that's me talking. Okay. So actually we're doing both at the same time here. Okay. This is looking at the underside of the skull, and this looks probably what gives people the greatest number of fits. People come back to the skull again and again while they're studying for the bone examination. They say the skull is the hardest. It could be. It's because it has so many holes. It has so many holes. Okay. Now, the largest hole is at the bottom right, the foramen magnum, which means the large hole. On the other side, we have the occipital condyle. We have two of those. Now, if you could imagine taking two fingers and putting them in at 9 and 3 o'clock into the foramen magnum, pull them out and spread them a little bit upward to 10 and 2 o'clock, you'd be on top of the occipital condyles. The occipital condyles rock on top of the first cervical vertebra. They are the attachment point of the skull and the spinal cord. Now, let's look at the right occipital condyle, okay, and go up to the carotid foramen. This hole makes passage for the carotid canal. Okay, that makes sense. We don't see it going all the way through. That's because it turns immediately towards the medial side, turns to the center and goes up. There you go. And so we don't actually see it. And so many students have a fit not being able to see something. But if it's not there, you're not going to see it. Okay. So that's the carotid foramen. Now, what is this word foramen, whether we use it at the end or the beginning of the word? Foramen is a hole, but it's a hole that goes through a single bone, one bone only. Can we have a hole go through more than one bone? If you've ever been rock climbing or just rock scampering, like at Joshua Tree or something, there aren't too many of those wind tunnels at Joshua Tree where there's one hole in the rock. Instead, the rocks are jumbled together and you can crawl in between the rocks, but you're crawling in between more than one rock. And when that happens, you do not have a foramen. A foramen is a hole through a single bone. Go back to the carotid foramen, you're there, and then go up and right, you're right. And this is the mandibular fossa, this whole area here. The mandibular fossa is where your jaw fits in. The mandibular fossa is where you have that pain when you are chewing taffy or something hard and you chewed it for a long period of time. You ever stuff 8, 9, 10 sticks of gum in your mouth at one time? Some of you have. And when you do that and you chew, it gets really hard. I mean, it hurts right in front of the ears. That's the location of the mandibular fossa. Above that, we have the zygomatic arch. It comes backwards from the zygomatic bone, which is up higher. There's zygomatic bone. Okay. And it extends also from below from the temporal bone. The zygomatic arch, it's not hard to see the arch, but it's hard to get across the idea that it's made up of two bone or parts or extensions of bones, part from the temporal, part from the zygomatic. It's not the most necessary thing in the world to know how that is formed. I'm only going to ask the term zygomatic arch. I'm not going to ask you the temporal portion of the zygomatic arch or the zygomatic portion of the zygomatic arch. You don't see it there. You don't see it written. It's not going to get asked. Okay. On the other side, above the occipital condyle, we have one thing left, the jugular foramen. This is a larger hole than the carotid foramen, and the jugular goes through it. The jugular goes through here, the carotid right above it, right straight above. Yes, there's the carotid foramen and the jugular down below. Both of them near the ear. So when you're hiking or walking fast or doing anything on a hot day, and you hear that sound in your ears, that's what's going on. It's the movement of the blood through these two vessels.
In the book, it says the zygomatic process. Is that the same as the zygomatic arch?
No,
That's Minos.
that the zygomatic process is the one of the two that I said I'm not even going to ask.
Oh, okay.
Because it's an extension from the zygomatic bone, and it goes about 3/4 of the way across the zygomatic arch,
Okay.
met by the temporal process from the other direction. But we're just going to call it zygomatic arch if you let me.
Okay.
Okay, next page, please. Okay, this looks round, but it's not. It's at an angle. This is the inside of the skull, of course. And if you look at the jugular foramen at the bottom there, that's where the jugular foramen comes in. Now, where's the carotid foramen come in? We don't get to see it. Okay, I said that before. But move medial and upward, please. There, exactly. You taken this class before?
No.
Okay. That's the spot where the carotid would come in. The internal acoustic meatus, right here. Now, from the external acoustic meatus, we had the ear coming in. You could put a Q-tip in that, and we will study the ear later. But coming out of the ear, we'll have the auditory nerves, the eighth cranial nerve, and that nerve comes out and joins the brain right here. Okay. Next one, please. The coronal suture. Okay, we couldn't see that from the angle we saw previously, but here's the coronal suture. Temporal bone, squamous portion. This is the flatter portion of the temporal bone. However, moving downward now towards the mastoid process and the auditory meatus, this is all rough, rocky, irregular, and it's referred to as the petrous portion. Petrous portion, Petrus means rock, like the city of Petra in Jordan, if you happen to know that one. The zygomatic arch shows up again. And without any hint here, can we find the squamous suture? Tell me if you need help.
Love the temporal bone.
You got it. That's the squamous suture. Where's the lambdoidal suture? Keep going down. There you go. It's right there. Okay. And the one we can't see this time is the sagittal suture, right up at the top. Doesn't show. Next one, please. Looking at the front, above the eye, you have a small hole. In many of us, it is a hole. Blood passes through, nerves pass through. In many of us also, though, it's not a hole, it's a notch. It would either be called the supraorbital foramen or the supraorbital notch. Either would be correct. Okay. On the examination that I give, if I point out that, and you want to use supraorbital foramen or notch, okay, fine, but I'm not going to use them both, so that you know what it has to be. We had an instructor when I first started teaching anatomy. He was a son of a gun. He liked to make you miss questions. You come to his class late. In other words, he locks the door right at 9 o'clock in the morning. And if you jiggle the doorknob, that's all you have to do. He takes 10 points off your grade. If you were to sharpen your pencil during the class, 10 points comes off your grade. If you sharpen it again anytime during the rest of the semester, 10 more points comes off of your grade. I mean, what are you getting graded on here? But he would ask questions, and he used multiple choice questions that were rather unfair, I thought. For instance, for here, the supraorbital foramen, that would be one of his answers. Okay, that's got to be the right answer. But he also called it the supraorbital foramen. And another answer was the superior orbital foramen. He would have you guessing so many ways that you wouldn't believe yourself. We don't do that. Okay, it's all going to be fair. Okay, next one, please. Okay, here's our zygomatic bone first. The lacrimal bone. Now, the lacrimal bone, it's small, meaning tears. It has a duct below it. Okay. And the very bridge of your nose is the nasal bone. Now, between the nasal bone and the zygomatic bone is the maxilla again. Okay. Next slide. That didn't go anywhere.
That was the last one.
Oh, well, that's why it didn't go anywhere. Okay. Back out of the module, or actually first, okay, yeah, that's fine. And now here, go to modules, go down, and let's see, it's 327. Okay. I want to give you a 10-minute break. Some people probably need it. So it's 28, 29, 30, 340, 340. Please, let's leave the screen where it is. Okay. And just we'll pick it up at 340. Okay. You can turn your video off if you want. Okay, we're back. Amber, you still there? Good.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know if you can see from your screen. You probably all can.
Yeah.
29 came back out of the 30 that were here. That's pretty darn good.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Me too.
Uh, okay. Did Ava ever make it to this class?
That's me. That's my middle name.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Okay. I know your first name a lot. You know, lots of emails.
I go by my middle name.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I remember you from all my emails. Okay. Okay. Let's go ahead and finish what we can. Want to thank you guys for being so creative, imaginative. I mean, I had a solution, but yours is better. Okay, so we'll hope that we don't have to do this again. I definitely will call IT and ask them what the hell is going on here. Okay, so I'm just very, very happy to be able to, for us to get through the material today. Okay, and not get behind or anything on. Have to play catch up. Horrible, horrible thing. Okay, so we're on the same screen, and this time we're going to go right to the other bones of the skull. It's 121. That's today. Okay, let's go ahead down. Okay, now they are playing a game on us. They're gonna. I've got some color slides in here, and the neat thing about the color is that for some people it makes it very easy to distinguish where the various bones are. Okay, here, for instance, if we start on the right, is the frontal bone, which we haven't talked about yet. That's your forehead. The ethmoid bone, which we'll talk about later. Okay, this bird-like structure here, the sphenoid bone. On either side and behind it, the temporal bones, right? And at the very base of the skull and back, the occipital bone. On the other side, we also have this, I'm pointing, and, and nobody can see my pointer. Find the zygomatic you have, and now the yellowish bone above it. Okay, that is part of the sphenoid bone, color coded. It's the same bone as in the other structure. Okay, you can see the frontal better on the left-hand side now, right? And the jaw is the mandible. I know everybody is going to be familiar with that. If I call off colors, I'm going to have trouble. The mandible, is that gray?
Yeah, pretty much.
The parietal, is that gray?
It's green.
That's green. Okay. Any purple in here?
The ethmoid is purple.
If I, when I have control again, if I call off the wrong color, correct me right away because I might mislead somebody. I don't see all of the colors well. I don't see them all at all. I'm the guy that's out in the middle of the desert and I'm stopped at a blinking light and I'm going to stay there forever because I don't know if it's red or if it's orange, you know. So it's just a minor flaw. It got me out of Catholic school. I don't know if you had to go to Catholic school or not, and I'm not saying yes or no or good or bad about the Catholic school. No opinion, except that I didn't want to go. When I was a kid, my mother was going to take me, though, when we were in San Francisco. She dragged me up a hill to a church. I think my father would care. No, he didn't care at all. He was a Baptist and he didn't care about anything. Got up to the church, and here were two nuns sent out to greet me. This was 1950, approximately, 1952 nuns, and they wore habits, and they looked like people used to say penguins or birds or whatever. They were frightening. They were frightening, and they looked frightening. I told my mother I didn't want to go. Didn't want to go. I'd heard bad things. Well, I had heard that you get beat inside the Catholic school. Well, I didn't want to go. She made me go. In I went. Didn't take 10 minutes before they started beating me over the head. And then another minute or so after that till they beat me on the back of the knuckles and everything else. I watched other kids get it worse than me. They're dragged into the back room and hit with yardsticks. And that was scary for a little kid who had not been used to that. When they took me back out to meet my mother, because she was teaching me the route to get there, I told my mother, I don't want to come back. I don't want to come back. And she looked at me and she said, you're coming back tomorrow. And the nuns were all happy and nodding their heads, Oh, man. I went back tomorrow, the next day. And at the end of the next day, the nuns brought me out to my mother and said, he can't come back. He can't come back. I was so happy. What had happened was we had a coloring book that we had to fill in. We had a certain picture for the day that we had to draw. And it was a picture of Jesus. And I drew Jesus the wrong color for their liking anyway. And so they kicked me out. That was good. Other than that, it's just been a minor inconvenience. Let's go down one. Oh, yeah. Okay, now back up again. We're going to look at this yellow one. Okay, the sphenoid bone. Let's go down now. One of the toughest bones that we'll have. Okay. It runs in your head from right to left-hand side. You can see it looking maybe like I said, bird, but some people see a butterfly or whatever. But in the center where it says lesser wing, and then goes from right to left, it looks more like a manta ray, right? I hope so. Drop down off the edge, go to the right, there you go, and drop down to the lower level. That's the greater wing. Go back to the lesser wing in the middle, come towards the bottom and drop off the ledge. A little more. Sella turcica. The sella turcica is like a saddle. Okay, if you could sit across it. The sella turcica houses the pituitary gland, okay, and helps protect it. The pituitary gland, that secretes about 8 different hormones throughout your entire life. Very important not to mess up any of those hormones. So protect it, the pituitary as best as possible by saddling it here with the sella turcica. In your entire life, the pituitary gland, with 8 hormones being secreted, secretes approximately 4 drops, just 4 drops. So that's how important it is to keep it stable. Go back to the lesser wing, please. Drop off towards you. Stop there. Optic canals. You can't see any canals, but there's one at the end of each of the arrows. The optic canal is a tunnel, and it goes into the orbit of the eye. The optic canal, you'll see it again from another direction, but it comes in here. So the optic nerves come in through the optic canals. Go back to the greater wing, but let's use the one on the other side, the left side, okay? And right at the end of the arrow, the foramen rotundum. I picked that one because on the other side, the foramen rotundum doesn't show as well. The foramen rotundum, it is a hole, it is a foramen. Rotundum refers to the fact that it's rounded when you get to look into it. And it goes forward, it goes to the back of the eye. Pull downward, and there you go to the foramen ovale. Ovale means oval, okay? And blood vessels and nerves enter and exit through the foramen ovale on either side. Behind, but lateral and inferior, we have the foramen spinosum. Very small. If you look, well, the needle is where it is. If you look to the other side, you don't even see it at all, because it never completely formed on the other side. Okay. The foramen spinosum also conducts nerves and blood vessels. Knowing these 3 isn't that difficult. Start with the foramen spinosum, like a heel of a high heel shoe. Move up to the foramen ovale, and like the footprint, the start of a footprint. So together, the 2 make a footprint. And then something being kicked and going off to the side is the foramen rotundum. The foramen lacerum at the bottom looks like it should be 2 holes, but they look incomplete. They are incomplete because they join another bone. Okay. The foramen lacerum in you and me as adults is completely filled with cartilage. No blood goes through, no nerves go through. It's completely filled with cartilage. So why the heck do we care about it? I mean, it doesn't do anything. It just takes up space. We care about it because when we take an X-ray of the head, when you tilt your head forward or backwards, you'll always see the foramina serum. It's the best landmark to be found. Okay, so we can always trust it for that. Okay, the next one, please. Okay. I'm looking at the top left and greater wing, sella turcica, that's nothing new there. Optic canal, nothing new there. The lesser wing is at the top. Below that, there are 3 lines right here, 1, 2, 3, that didn't get labeled for some reason. The upper one is the foramen rotundum, then the foramen ovale, then the foramen spinosum. On the other side, on the right, the greater wing. Okay. The thing in the center that's being highlighted, the spinal column. The lesser wing, now you notice the lesser wing is facing the other direction because this whole thing has been turned around. Okay, we took the one on the left, turned it around. Let's don't worry about the superior orbital fissure yet, but the pterygoid process, like 2 legs that the sphenoid bone stands upon. This will be behind your maxilla, and we'll see it again. It's not a good enough, it's a good picture. It's just not good enough to expect you to understand it yet. Well, I think we'll see it just in a moment. Okay, let's go ahead. Okay. On this one, we'll start on the right-hand side, your right-hand side. The top frontal bone. What is that, tan or orange?
It's like an orange.
Okay. The ethmoid bone, they don't have it labeled singly. The ethmoid bone is in the center of the frontal bone. This is the ethmoid bone. It's at the top of your nose. In martial arts, you can hit somebody upwards in the nose, dislodge the ethmoid bone, and it would be lethal. There is a cribriform plate on the right and left. These 2 plates are perforated and they have cribriform foramina, also known as olfactory foramina. That allows gaseous vapors to come through to the brain and to the olfactory lobes for smell. Now, since we're actually coming down the sheet, not just going to the right, I don't care about the word diplo. Okay, we'll be using the term spongy bone later. Go back to the right-hand side. First one in the blue section, the sphenoid bone. That's actually the lesser wing. Sella turcica, keep on going down, please. Sella turcica here. Temporal bone. Oh, I don't know that color.
Purple.
Purple, yeah. And then petrous portion of the bone. that's showing this ridge. The petrous portion has the bones of the ear or ossicle in it as well. Okay. It has the mastoid process. It has the styloid process. The foramen magnum and the parietal bone we passed, and the occipital bone. You do not need to know the groove for the venous sinus on the bottom of the left-hand side. The jugular foramen shows the internal acoustic meatus shows, we just saw these. The foramen spinosum, ovale, and rotundum, and the optic foramen. Okay, it's nice to have some review, but we don't need to review all day the same thing. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Okay, looking into the eye on the left or right, it looks like there's a boomerang in each eye. Those slits allow muscles to come into the orbit of the eye and move the eyeball. The upper one is the superior orbital fissure. And the lower one, the bigger, longer one, is the inferior orbital fissure. In the nose, the perpendicular plate is the uppermost portion of the nasal cavity. It's attached in part of the ethmoid bone. Below that, and melded to it, is the vomer, a different bone altogether. These two bones melt together. Well, why can't they? We have plenty of sutures, plenty of other bones that do. Upper half, perpendicular plate. Lower half, vomer. Maxilla, we see. And then above the teeth, the alveolar process. The alveolar processes hold the teeth. Now, the joint between teeth and the alveolar process is a gomphosis from yesterday or from Tuesday. So all the gomphoses are in this area here. Alveolar process. Next one, please. Okay. Start on the lower right, mandibular fossa. We already saw that. I want to get it out of the way. Remember, the jaw fits into there. The vomer is the next one up. The vomer is right in the middle here at the back. Now, when we looked at it a moment ago from the front, it was only the lower half of the nasal cavity. But it's top to bottom in the nasal cavity in the posterior. The palatine process at the top. This is the roof of your mouth, the hard palate. This is your palatine process. It's actually fully called the palatine process of the maxilla because the bone forms the palate, but it originates from the maxilla. So the roof of your mouth is palatine process or palatine process of maxilla. At the very back of the mouth is the palatine bone. It never shows well, but you can feel it if you put, and you have to concentrate, if you put your tongue on your hard palate, up at the top of your mouth, and now take your tongue and go backwards. And just before it hits soft material, it'll go smooth. Goes a little bit smoother. and that's the palatine bone. Don't worry, nobody's ever going to ask you to identify it that way. The palatine bone does have, however, on either side, there and on the other side too, small foramina. The word foramina means the plural of foramen. And I just noticed foramina is misspelled here. Should only have one M. Those things get me, and I have to stay up late and correct those. Okay, let's go to the next one, please. Okay, here's the jaw. On the jaw, if you put your hand on your the front of your jaw, like you're resting, or you're pretending you're an author having your picture taken, you know, I hate it the way they pose like that. If you put your hand on your jaw, okay, like this, that's the body. That's the body, and the entire bone is the mandible. Above the front of the body is the alveolar process again. You have an alveolar process both for the mandible and for the maxilla. On the side of your jaw, you have the ramus. The plural is rami. Okay. You find ramus. If you were to slap the sides of your jaw in front of your ears, like the Home Alone kid, then you have the rami identified. And only one on each side. At the very posterior, this is the mandibular condyle. It fits into the mandibular fossa. It is also known as the condylar fossa. No, that's good. Just leave it. Mandibular condyle. Let's go past this little notch in front of it to the point. Up you go. This is the coronoid process. Whereas the mandibular condyle attaches to the mandibular fossa, the coronoid process does not attach and is free to drop down. Okay. Muscle does attach to it, but it's free to drop down. If these are going to give you a little trouble, I always remember the coronoid process is the one that drops down towards the heart. At the posterior upper mandibular foramen. There we go, sorry. Mandibular foramen. That's the hole in the mandible. And that's a spot where nerves enter in great numbers. And it's a spot where a dentist may look to I'll give you a shot of Novocaine. The mental foramen on there you are. The mental foramen is a shot if somebody's going to work on your front teeth where you might get an injection. I've been to so many dentists in my life and hated them all. Hated all those men. Terrible, terrible, unsympathetic idiots. Then I finally got a woman dentist, and I still have her. She can do a root canal in 45 minutes, and it's painless. It's just, if you ever need a recommendation, let me know. Okay, next one. Okay, the ossicles of the ear. Okay. The ossicles are the malleus, incus, and stapes. In that order, sound is received and passed along towards the inner ear. First the malleus, then the incus, then the stapes. The malleus used to be, well, still is in some places, called the hammer. You may not call it the hammer, please. You have to look at it hard to see a hammer, but it is possible. The incus used to be called, and still is in some places, the anvil. The anvil. And you know, that looks pretty much like an anvil, but how many of you have one of those at home? Nobody has an anvil. Nobody necessarily knows what one looks like unless they watch Wile E. Coyote cartoons. So we won't use that. And the stapes or stirrups, yes, now that one looks like a stirrup, but we're still not going to use it. Malleus, incus, stapes. Okay. You will be asked on tests to identify one of these. Okay, next up. Now here's looking into the eye. And if you look right back straight into the eye in the middle, you see a rounded structure hole. That's the optic foramen. It's not even labeled here. That's the optic foramen. Okay, you saw that come out under the lesser wing of the sphenoid. The frontal bones at the top. The sphenoid bone, I got it labeled in two locations. Okay. It's on both sides. The zygomatic bone, part of it's there. Pull back, shorten the arrow. No, shorten the arrow. There you go. That's the zygomatic bone. The maxilla, the lower arrow is what we've looked at so far, but it also extends into the eye. Above the maxilla, within the eye, go up, there you go, is the ethmoid bone. The ethmoid bone is in right eye, left eye, top of nose, and the top of the skull. And then forward of that is the lacrimal bone. This slide, when I put it together, the idea was, or intention, is to point out the bones of the orbit of the eye. So let's go through them again, starting at the top, at the frontal, and we'll go counterclockwise to the sphenoid, then the zygomatic, maxilla, lacrimal, and ethmoid. Now, if you count them, there's 6, but the book will tell you, truthfully, there are 7 bones associated with the orbit of the eye. The 7th is the palatine bone. It's a very small little peekaboo piece of it, and it never shows in any photograph that I've found. So I just sort of eliminate it from consideration. You do need to know these 6, however. Okay, maybe the last one.
That's the last one.
Okay, let's go back and now let's see if you can do it. Give me back the screen.
I'm sorry?
Can you try to give me back the screen?
Oh, yeah.
Hey, that worked out fine. Okay. Okay. The only thing that I left out for today was the lecture on ossification. Short lecture. I'm going to finish that one up and catch up completely. Got put behind a little bit by our inconvenience here. Anybody with any questions about what's due? When do you expect to see the practice exam posted?
Is that on Friday?
Yes. Okay. I can post it right now. Okay. But unfortunately, if I posted it right now, a lot of people wouldn't have time to study for it at all. Instead, we'll just rush to it. That doesn't work.
Is the practice exam on chapter 1, 9, and 7 what we just went over?
I know it's on 1 and 9. Okay. It was probably going to be on 6, which is the ossification chapter, but I will remove those questions so as to not confuse anybody. As far as the bones, yes, chapter 7 also. So 1, 9, and 7 would be the answer. And you shouldn't really have a lot of trouble with it. Now, somebody who does have trouble with it is either one, having trouble, or two, they tried to take it too early before they had for themselves a chance to study. Okay. When is the one of the chapter outlines due?
Monday.
at midnight.
Yeah, Monday midnight. That's right. Okay, good. You know, uh, okay. Why do you want to do the discussion section, the chapter outline, and the practice quiz? One, because all three of them are going to help you grade. And two, all three of them permit you to take the extra credit when we get to the practical examination. Without them, then you don't get to do the extra credit. Okay? Doesn't mean you're not going to get an A or anything like that. It just means you're not going to have an easy enough time of it. Okay.
One more question. When are you going to post the discussion board for this week?
Oh, for
besides the meet and greet?
No, the meet and greet is the discussion board for week 1. Okay.
Okay.
I know most of the people here have actually been to the meet and greet and done it already. So I don't think it's going to confuse anybody if I pull it down into module 1. Okay, it's the same thing. Okay, you don't need to do it another time. When am I going to post the discussion board for the next week? That'll be Monday night. When you're turning in your other material, I'll be putting up my material. Okay. There is nothing to do in Bio 110 yet. Okay, you can go there, but there's nothing in the. Okay, you can tell when I get a chat thing. Okay, there's nothing to do with that. One person did email me. It was a good email, good question about when are we going to have a Zoom meeting in Bio 110? Okay, and the answer to that is only 3 times, and only before the 3 lecture exams. Okay, I'll have a special uh, setup for people to ask questions and get answers as well. Now, does that cheat the people out of the other one or no? Not, not really, not at all. They could all end up asking the same questions, but I think the opportunity to listen to other people's questions is very helpful. Okay. Got anything else? Okay, Sarah, yes, email me, please. Andy, yes, to your question. Just email me though, please. Okay, well, stay healthy over the weekend. Okay. Amber, thank you.
No problem.